boxes of cereal, confectionery, and pot noodles, all preferable to the slop they served at mealtimes. The luxuries helped, but they could not hide the fact that he had been buried deep in the penal system, that there was no prospect that might change, and that he was utterly alone. He turned his attention back to the legal papers that he had been asked to review. His lawyers were due to appeal the decision not to grant him bail, and they needed him to approve his witness statement before it was submitted. His money had enabled him to assemble a dream team of the very best minds in the English legal profession, including solicitors from magic circle firms and the barrister with the planet-sized intellect who had recently set the record for the highest hourly fee in the United Kingdom. The cost was eye-watering, but Huxley didn't care about that. His best advantage was a bottomless well of money, and he was prepared to spend every last penny if it bought him his freedom. His barrister had suggested that the decision not to grant bail might have been improperly reached, and if they were able to demonstrate that, the court would have no choice but to release him. The hearing was scheduled for next week, and, even though the lawyers had told him that the odds were against him, Huxley had started counting down the days to the moment when he would be able to leave the HSU and conduct his defence from outside. He heard the sound of footsteps approaching and looked up from his papers to check the time. It was just after 5, and he wasn't due to be given his dinner for another 30 minutes. He expected to hear the footsteps pass by along the corridor, but they didn't. They stopped, and then he heard the sound of the key in the lock. He stood and faced the door. One of his regular guards was standing outside. He was carrying a tray with a covered plate and a plastic beaker. There was a camera in the corner of the room. The guard stepped into its field of vision, his back to the lens, so that it would have been impossible for anyone to see his face. "You're getting out tonight," he said quietly. "What?" "Take the pill." Huxley felt self-conscious with the camera on him, but he couldn't leave it like that. "What does that mean?" he said quietly, masking his concern with a forced smile. The guard paused and stared at Huxley in a meaningful way that left him in no doubt that he wasn't being given a choice and that there would not be a discussion. "Enjoy your meal." The guard backed out of the cell, keeping his face hidden from the camera, shut the door and locked it. Huxley listened to the sound of his footsteps as they echoed away along the corridor. He went to the desk and lifted the plastic cloche that covered his plate. Tonight's meal was a cheeseburger, fries and a salad with apple juice in a covered plastic cup. Everything looked normal until he lifted the bun and saw a single pill had been placed on top of the burger. It was blue and the size of the nail on his little finger. He plucked up the pill with his thumb and forefinger and hid it in his hand while he took a handful of fries with his other hand and ate them. Apart from his money, Huxley was fortunate enough to have leverage over a large list of contacts with huge political power in countries all around the world. He had passed messages by way of his lawyer to his contact in both the Russian and Indian embassies and appealed for their help in getting him out. His lawyer had told him that an attempt would be made to extricate him, but that had been 6 weeks ago, and nothing had come of it. He had stewed on the snub ever since, and had been thinking about how he might up the ante in an attempt to shake them out of their inaction. He could ruin people with a simple leak to the press, and he had come to the conclusion that he was going to have to remind them of that. But now, this. There had been no suggestion that his plea had been taken seriously, far less what any attempt to get him out would involve. He didn't even know who was responsible for whatever had been planned, and now he was being asked to take a pill with no idea what it might do to him. He felt nauseous as he realised that it might be something else. What if, he thought, it was not an attempt to win his freedom, but an attempt to end his life? He didn't know the guard. Who was he? Who had paid him? Huxley turned so that his hand was shielded from the camera and opened his fist.